Hi, Power Query again today. Indeed, this is a Power Query challenge from Mr. Excel. If you want to watch the video from Mr. Excel, check the link below. Now, let me walk you through the details we have here. This is the table we have, a very typical layout. On the first column, which is the category description, we have 6 different categories in total. On the right is the department's total in quarter in the rectangular block, followed by, on the right hand side, the details by employee. This is employee 1, this is the employee 2, and this is employee 3, and employee 4 here. And there is a common pattern that under the name of each employee is the subtotal for that employee. On the right hand side is the details by quarter. We can see that the total here is 42, which is the same. And the subtotal for employee 272 is also aligned to the details there. What we want is the table look like this. We still have the 6 different categories here, but we want the employee under one single column like this. Then we will have the details by quarter on separate columns for each quarter. Finally, we will have the total for each row of the record. This is the challenge we have, and Power Query is ideal for solving this. Let's watch it in action. The first step is to load this table into Power Query. We can see that in this sample file from Mr. Excel, a name aggregator is assigned to the range. What a perfect description, aggregator. But we will have a problem here because the name range is hard-coded, which means when I have new data coming in, for example, employee 5 and employee 6, which I want to append here, then I realize that the name range aggregator, it does not take the new data, which is no good, because I want Power Query to include new data automatically. So we need to do it in a different way. I would recommend we still convert it into an Excel table, but we need to pay attention to one thing. Let me show you. In general, we will check the box. My table has headers when we create an Excel table. However, there is one limitation for the Excel table is that we cannot have the same headers for different columns. In other words, no repeating headers allowed. In our case, we see that Q1, Q2, Q4, Q3, and Q4 repeats many times. So it will give us trouble. Let me show you what it is. Let's insert it with the box check. We see that Excel adds a number at the end of the repeating columns. 4, 5, this is 6 to 9. In this case, no columns are repeating. However, we have a very serious problem. It turns Q1 to Q12, Q2 to Q23, which is super wrong. So we have to undo it. We do it in a slightly different way. We will uncheck the box. Click OK. Now we see that Excel adds a header rows for us. Basically, it is column 1 to column end. In our case, it is column 26. All the way down. At this point, let's try to add some new data. Copy it, and then paste it at the end of the table. Now we see that the Excel table expands automatically to include all the new data, which is good. But for the moment, let's remove all the new data. We don't need it right now. We will do it for testing after we have created all the transformation steps. Now we are ready to load this table into the Power Query. Go to Data tab, select from Table and Range. Let's rename the table to Data for Makeup because we are going to make it look more beautiful. The first step is to transpose the whole table. Go to the Transform tab, select Transpose. This will turn the columns into rows, rows into columns. Now we have a much better layout. The first row is the category description. We can put it to the headers by clicking this Use First Rows as Headers. Now we see that the top 5 rows are the grand totals. After that is the details of each employee. On the first row is the subtotal of each employee. Under that is the details by quarter for that employee. If you have experience in preparing data for pivot tables, we know that grand totals and subtotals are not required in the dataset. So we are going to remove those. To remove the grand totals is easy. We can simply remove the top rows, select the top 5 rows here. The next step, we need to separate the employee from the quarter in this column. As a general rule, we should not have more than one information under a single column. Right here we have employee and the quarter, which is not good. That's why we need to separate them to indicate that this Q1 belongs to this employee, this Q3 is also belong to employee 1, and so on. Same case, we need to identify these 4 quarters belong to employee 2, this 4 quarters belongs to employee 3. We have to do it for all the employees. So now I'm going to add an index column. Go to the Add Column tab, click on Index Column. Now we have a column of sequential number from 0 to 19. Since we have a very consistent pattern in our table, 5 rows of record for each employee. See? Therefore, we need to further transform the index column into a repeating pattern of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so that we will have the anchor number for the unpivot steps later. How to do that? Select the index column, go to the Transform tab. Here, under the Standard, select Modulo. We want to divide all the values in this column by 5 and then get the remainders as a result. Let's click OK. See, this was the original value 5, 5 divided by 5, remainder 0. 6 divided by 5, remainder 1. 7 divided by 5, remainder is 2, and so on and so forth. As a result, we've got a repeating sequential list of 0 to 4. We also noticed that all 0 in the column represent the employee name. So now we can go to the Add Column tab, select Conditional Columns, name it as the name. If the index column is equal to 0, then return the value from the column category description, which is the name of the employee. Otherwise, that is quarter 1 to quarter 4, return no. This is the new conditional column that's created. I need to fill the gap here, so I go to Transform, Fill, Fill Done. Now we have a column of employee names. The next step is to get rid of the subtotal rows. We can see that for each subtotal rows, we have a value of 0 in the index column, so we can filter out 0 in the OK. Make sure to take a look at the formula bar to ensure that the criteria set is not equal to 0. Now we don't need the index column anymore, we can remove it. Let's right click and remove it. We can rename this column to quarter. Now we are ready to unpivot. Select the column quarter, hold the Control key, select the column named, right click, unpivot other columns. Wow! Basically, this layout is good enough for various kinds of analysis. Let's rename the headers to category. Then define the data type for each column. This text. And this should be decimal, that is fine. What's next is to put the value for each quarter Q1 to Q4 across the columns. This is very much like what we do with pivot table. So select the quarter column, go to Transform tab, Pivot column. Here select the value. This is what we want to summarize. OK. We are almost there. What's still missing is the total columns. So I select the column Q1, hold the Shift key to select all the 4 columns. We want to add a column, so go to Add Column tab, under the Standard, Add. As simple as this. Let's rename it to Total. Done. But the request is to have the category in the first column. Simply drag it to the left. Now we have the result in the right order. Category and then name. Now go to the Home tab. Close and Node. Close and Node 2. Tell Excel where we want to load it to. Next, select existing worksheet. Here, select the cell reference. Click OK. Dun 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 dun. Although we can get the end result all the way with Power Query, I suggest we stop at the step before the pivot column, as we can use a regular pivot table based on there to give the desired result. Let me show you how. Let's duplicate this query by right-clicking on it, select Duplicate. Now we see that there are 2 queries here. This is the original, this is the duplicated one. Let's rename it to for pivot. Looking into the step here, I suggest we stop from here. We do not need the Power Query to pivot the column, because from here, this table layout is good for various kinds of data analysis or data modeling. This is indeed the preferred layout. If we go one step further, this is not so good because this is not good for data analysis. That's why we should stop here, right-click, select Delete until End. Delete. This is the query I need. Next, also change the data type here to Test. Instead of loading it to table, I am going to load it into a only query connection. Now we see that it is a connection only query. What I'm going to do is to insert a pivot table. Here I will select View an existing connection, choose connection. These are the 2 queries we have. Select this one, open. OK. Now you see our opened pivot table is there. We have 4 data fields to pivot. We can drag the employee and category to rows, the quarter to columns, values to values. Now I have the summary table, which gives me a higher flexibility. We can drag the quarter to the filter, drag the category to the columns, even drag it back, drag the name on the filter. I believe end users will love it for the flexibility they can enjoy because they can create their own style layout. They can perform different analysis. That's why I said This is the preferred way of doing the same task and easier way of doing the same thing. Well, in case you want to stick to the original layout, we can edit this pivot table. Go to the Design tab, Report Layout, select Tabular Form. Remove the subtotal. Also remove the grand total. We have more or less the same layout required. If you want to fill the gap here with the employee, we can do so. Let's go to the Design tab again. Under Report Layout, show here, repeat all items labeled. That is it. Since this is a pivot table, we can reorder the items simply with drag and drop. We now have almost the same layout except the order of the column. This column is employee, the second column is category. Notwithstanding this limitation, I still recommend this as it gives the end user higher flexibility. Of course, provided that the end user knows how to do the pivot table. If the end user doesn't know how to use pivot table, then we should stick with Power Query to give the end result. Now let's try with some new data. Copy here. Let's paste the data to the end of the source table. With the new data added, go to Data tab, refresh all. See if we have the employee 5 and employee 6. No problem. There they are. Both output take the new data and show the summary report we want. Now let's do tidy up by hiding row number 5. That is it. So tell me which way you like. Transform the table with Power Query only or Power Query plus pivot table. Please leave your comment. I hope you like it. Bye bye.